India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Russia observes National Day of Mourning for the victims of Moscow terror attack. 11 suspects arrested, including 4 gunmen. Putin vows to punish those behind Russia concert massacre. UN Chief Antonio Gutteres appeals for Gaza ceasefire to allow in more aid, says Blockade a moral outrage. India's External Affairs Minister says Pakistan uses terrorism as an instrument of statecraft, asserts India will not skirt this problem anymore. Sunday, the 24th of March, is the day of mourning in Russia after a large concert venue near Moscow became the scene of a mass shooting late Friday. At least 133 people were killed, including children, according to the officials. DD India's Dasha Charnishova has more from Moscow.
Speaking 19 hours after the terrorist attack at the Crocus City Hall, Russian President Vladimir Putin said 4 men directly involved in the attack have been detained. Russian Interior Ministry says they are all foreigners. FSB had earlier said that these men were trying to escape to Ukraine. President Putin said it is now needed to identify all the accomplices who were involved in the attack, people who have helped to plan, stash weapons, get to the scene. He did not assign the blame, but said whoever they are, they should be punished. So now the investigation focuses on who stood behind this attack. Sunday has been declared the National Day of Mourning in Russia. But as the situation settled at the site of the attack, people started to bring more and more flowers in memory of the victims. Hundreds of people volunteered to donate blood. The body count has been rising as many people were trapped inside the rooms where they tried to hide from the gunmen and later suffocated. Dasha Charnishova in Moscow, reporting for DD India.
And Russian embassy in India has opened an online book of condolences to leave a message of sympathy to the families of victims of the Moscow terrorist attack. And UN Secretary General Antonio Gutteres has called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire and the release of Israeli hostages held in Gaza. He witnessed a long line of blocked relief trucks on Egypt's side of the border with the Gaza while visiting the Rafah crossing on Saturday. Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz criticized Gutteres in a social media post for blaming Israel without condemning in any way the Hamas-ISIS terrorists who plunder humanitarian aid. We have more.
Well, the United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Gutteres visiting that Rafah border, crossing the Egyptian side of the border crossing, calling it a moral outrage that so many aid trucks were lined up on the Egyptian side of the border and unable to access those who so desperately need the help inside the Gaza Strip. He said it was a moral outrage that could not happen. He also called for an ironclad commitment from Israel that humanitarian supplies can receive unfettered access to those who so desperately need it in the Gaza Strip. But this visit will have much of an impact, but it does join a chorus of international pressure when it comes to the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, called catastrophic by aid agencies, and in the context of a rift between the Israeli government and some of its closest allies. We saw just in the last day or so Anthony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, here in Israel, meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu and the war cabinet, urging the Israeli government against an operation in the southern city of Rafah, pinned up against that Egyptian border, saying it would be a mistake and that the US position is that it should not happen. Prime Minister Netanyahu pushing back very firmly, saying even with or without US support, Israeli forces will go into Rafah, an operation which Antonio Gutteres, the UN Secretary General, say would lead to humanitarian catastrophe. Alex Kadya in Tel Aviv reporting for DD India.
And the UN Security Council is set to vote on a resolution on Monday demanding a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. The resolution put forward by the 10 elected council members is backed by Russia and China, who vetoed a US-sponsored resolution on Friday that supported an immediate and sustained ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict in Gaza. The 22-nation Arab group at the UN issued a statement on Friday night appealing to all 15 council members to act with unity and urgency and vote for the resolution to halt the bloodshed, preserve human lives and avert further human suffering and destruction. Since the conflict broke out on October 7, the Security Council has adopted 2 resolutions on the worsening humanitarian situation in Gaza, but none has called for a ceasefire. Now, Israeli army released a video on Saturday of its commanding officer of the Southern Command commenting on the operation around Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza. The Israeli commander has said troops will continue their operation at Gaza's largest hospital, Al-Shifa, until the last terrorist is in their hands. Fighting raged on Saturday around Gaza's main hospital, where Israel says it has so far killed more than 170 gunmen in an extensive raid. The Israeli army released footage early on Sunday to show an air raid on Baalbek Hezbollah stronghold in eastern Lebanon. The Israeli army in a social media post said the strike targeted a manufacturing site containing weapons belonging to Hezbollah. In the same post, the Israeli army said aircraft had also struck rocket launchers directed at northern Israel earlier, as well as intercepted a number of launches. Hezbollah said in a statement that in response to the bombing of a place in the city of Baalbek, it had targeted an Israel missile and artillery base in Yoav and the Kaila barracks with more than 60 Katyusha rockets. And like every Saturday, hundreds rallied in Tel Aviv, urging the Israeli government to make a deal with Hamas to secure the release of hostages held in Gaza. The demonstrators raised pictures of dozens of Israeli hostages held in Hamas in Gaza since October 7. An Israeli delegation led by Mossad chief David Barnea is in Doha for indirect negotiations with Hamas. The sides have previously said that if a deal is reached, Israel would suspend its Gaza offensive for 6 weeks and recover 40 or 130 hostages still held by Hamas. Hamas wants any ceasefire to include an Israeli commitment to end the conflict and withdraw forces from Gaza. Israel has ruled this out, saying it will eventually press the campaign to dismantle Hamas. Now in London, dozens gathered outside the Foreign Office to protest against a new national security law that came into force in Hong Kong on Saturday. The protesters say the law, also known as Article 23, erodes freedom in the city and damages its international financial hub credentials. It took effect at midnight, days after Hong Kong's lawmakers passed it unanimously, fast-tracking legislation to plug what authorities called national security loopholes. Tensions escalated along the United States-Mexico border as migrants attempted to challenge the newly razor wire barriers erected on the border near El Paso. Texas Department of Public Safety troopers stationed on the U.S. side of the border fired non-lethal projectiles into a crowd of migrants attempting to dismantle the razor wire barriers. A U.S. appeals court on March 20th began hearing arguments on whether to continue blocking Texas law that would empower state authorities to arrest and prosecute migrants for illegally crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. The dispute over the Texas law is one in a series of legal battles between Republican state officials and the Biden administration over the state's ability to police the border. And the U.S. has officially barred UNRWA funding through March 2025 after U.S. President Joe Biden signed a $1.2 trillion government funding bill into law. The bill also eliminates funding for the UN Commission of Inquiry against Israel and fully funds the annual U.S. security commitment of $3.3 billion for Israel, which allocates funding for the Iron Dome and other defensive systems. The act withholds funds from the UN Human Rights Council to hold it accountable for blatant anti-Israel actions and reform the Council's selection process to prevent human rights abusers from becoming members. The bill also forces the UN and other international organizations funded in the bill to assess and report on efforts to combat anti-Israel bias and anti-Semitism and to vet personnel for connections to terrorist groups. The Act will also implement new conditions on any assistance to Gaza, including mechanisms for coordination with Israel, prevention of diversion to Hamas or other terrorist entities, and a requirement for third-party monitoring. Now, former US President Donald Trump continuing his winning streak in the race to the White House. Trump registered victory in the Republican primaries in the state of Louisiana and Illinois, while President Joe Biden won the Louisiana Democratic presidential primary. As per the early projections, both Trump and Biden are expected to win over 88% of votes. Earlier this week, Trump won the Illinois Republican primary. Chinese Coast Guard ships hit a Philippine supply boat with water cannons on Saturday in the latest confrontation near a disputed shoal in the South China Sea, causing injuries to its Navy crew members and heavy damage to the wooden vessel. The far-flung shoal has been occupied by a small contingent of Philippine Navy and Marines on a marooned warship since 1999, but has been surrounded by Chinese Coast Guard and suspected militia vessels in an increasingly tense territorial standoff. It's the second time the Philippine boat has been damaged by the Chinese Coast Guard's water cannon assault in March alone. Polls closed in the first round of Slovakia's presidential election on Saturday, with the country headed for a runoff round. Career diplomat and former Slovak Foreign Minister Ivan Korkok won the first round of Slovakia's presidential election on 42% support, with over 99% of districts reporting. His opponent, ruling coalition member Peter Pellegrini, was in second on 37%, with no candidate having won a majority. Pellegrini will face off against Korkok in a runoff vote next month on April 6th. Now, Senegal are voting for its fifth president in a delayed election after weeks of political unrest. 19 contenders are vying to replace President Macky Sall, who is stepping down after a second term. Among those in the running for Senegal's top job is the governing coalition's candidate, former Prime Minister Amadou Ba. His strongest challenger is seen as Bassirou Diomaye Faye, who was released from jail just last week after being detained since April 2023 on charges of insurrection. Over 200 students and staff abducted by gunmen from a school in northern Nigeria earlier this month have been released. This was informed by the office of the governor of Kaduna on Sunday. Earlier, Nigeria's army has rescued 17 students and a woman who were kidnapped in a dawn raid by armed men 2 weeks ago in northwest Sokoto state. The attack at a school on March 9 came 2 days after the mass abduction of school children in Kaduna. About 23 Nigerian soldiers have been killed and 17 others wounded by suspected insurgents in the country's town of Delapere. Defense authorities say the soldiers were carrying out raids designed to reassure locals in the area of their safety when they were ambushed by the insurgents. DD India's Tessa McKende reports from Jos in Nigeria.
The authorities say the troops were also able to neutralize 30 of the insurgents. More than 100 of them had attacked an army unit using homemade bombs and suicide vehicles. Niger Republic is ruled by a military junta which toppled the government of President Mohamed Bazoum in a coup in July last year, citing worsening insecurity as a reason. But the security concerns on attacks are yet to abate. In January, about 10 soldiers were wounded in the country's southeast and about a dozen insurgents killed after they clashed at a border town with Nigeria. The latest attack on the soldiers is coming barely a week after the Nigerian military announced that it was breaking off its military cooperation agreements with the United States. The country, just like Burkina Faso and Mali, also pulled out of West Africa's regional bloc ECOWAS, which has been addressing the security issues with a multinational joint task force comprising 15 member countries. The three countries have now set up a joint task force to tackle security threats in their countries. They say it will be operational soon. Tessa McKende in Jos, reporting for DD India.
All right, we'll slip into a very short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India Live. In a symbolic gesture of solidarity and appreciation for the brave soldiers, Defence Minister celebrates Holi in Leh with army personnel. Coal fever grips India. Congress party releases fourth list of candidates. Bharatiya Janata Party holds Central Election Committee meet. Double header in IPL today. Rajasthan to take on Lucknow Super Giants. Gujarat Titans and Mumbai Indians also to start their campaigns.
In today's episode, let's try to understand what does it mean to truly celebrate all women. Let's uncover the layers of their struggles in different walks of life.
My biggest motivation was to save the environmental waste that I was creating, to reduce the carbon footprint, waste footprint. And when we talk about menstrual waste or periods as a topic, I think this fits in very well with the intersection of social and environmental issues.
The weather in Meghalaya definitely one of the center points of how we design these systems. And then sort of maybe just take the region in the state and try and design a system that is designed to work in that situation.
We address financial education topics, from making a family budget to creating a small business plan for micro-enterprises. Topics also include health and wellness for women.
Global temperatures have changed these days. That too, it doesn't rain where it needs to rain. And in this situation, the only crop that survives is millet.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Hundreds of pro-life activists rallied through Argentina's capital on Saturday, demanding the repeal of the country's abortion law. The demonstrators marched with banners "No to Abortion" and "Argentina without abortion." Argentina's President Javier Milei has expressed its rejection of the abortion law passed in the South American country in December 2020. Milei, during his presidential campaign, promised to hold a constitutional referendum on the abortion law. The Indian Consulate in New York expressed its deepest condolences to the family members of an Indian origin 21-year-old woman, Arshia Joshi, who died in a car accident in Pennsylvania on March 21st. The consulate stated that it was in touch with the family of the deceased girl and the local community leaders while assuring all possible assistance to repatriate her mortal remains to India. Weather news now. Sudan is currently gripped by a heat wave with temperatures rising up to as high as 42 degrees Celsius. Muslims in South Sudan's capital city Juba are observing the fasting month of Ramadan under extreme heat. Community leaders in Sudan said they are finding ways around to cool down while abstaining from food and water. To cope with the heat, people are preferring to drink more water during iftar. Earlier, the Met Department had issued warnings that there will be unusually high temperature in March, particularly in the northern parts of the country. And South American country Brazil is battering with heavy rains and landslides in Rio de Janeiro state, leading to the death of 7 people on Saturday. Meanwhile, a person died after a house collapsed in the neighboring city of Teresópolis. Rio authorities remain on alert on Sunday as the cold front is expected to move away from the state. Earlier, heavy storms in the month of January and February killed more than 20 people in Rio de Janeiro. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar took a dig at Pakistan over its terrorism activities, saying that the neighboring country is sponsoring terrorism at almost an industry level.
How do you deal with a neighbor who does not hide the fact that they use terrorism as an instrument of statecraft? Now, it's not a one-off happening. I mean, different countries at different points of time have experienced this. But a very sustained, almost an industry level, assembly line of people whose job it is to do bad things at night. To produce this with the intent of pressurizing your neighbor becomes a real challenge. So what we have come to conclude is that we have to find a way of addressing it. That dodging the problem gets us nowhere. It only invites more trouble. So I don't have a quick instantaneous fix. But what I can tell you is that India will not skirt this problem anymore.
And speaking at an event held post his lecture session on his authored book, Why Bharat Matters, at Institute of South Asian Studies at National University of Singapore, Dr. Jaishankar slammed China for disturbing the foundation of equilibrium and violating border pacts in 2020. Listen in.
We're not talking of solving the boundary dispute. We are talking about maintaining peace and tranquility on the border. And we had. I mean, from 1975 till 2020, nobody got killed on that border. So for 45 years, it worked. We have to ask ourselves today, why is it not working now? And until we have that stabilization of the border, to me, it is illogical to expect that the equilibrium building, the relationship building, doing more things would move forward.
India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh travelled to Leh in Ladakh to celebrate the festival of colour, Holi, with armed forces personnel at Leh military station. The minister and armed forces personnel were seen smearing colours to each other and exchanging greetings. Army Chief General Manoj Pandey was also present on the occasion in Leh. The festival of colour, Holi, celebrates the triumph of good over evil. One of the biggest festivals in India, it is celebrated with great fanfare by Hindus around the world. Rajnath Singh was earlier scheduled to celebrate Holi with armed forces personnel deployed in Siachen, but due to the inclement weather conditions there, his schedule was changed and decided to celebrate Holi in Leh. Now let's get you the latest on what's happening in India in the run-up to the world's largest democratic elections. The Congress party on Saturday released the fourth list of 46 candidates for the upcoming general polls. With this, the Congress has declared a total of 183 candidates for the upcoming polls so far. Uttar Pradesh Congress President Ajay Rai has been fielded from Varanasi against BJP candidate and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Congress leader Digvijay Singh will contest from Rajgarh constituency. Imran Masood from Saharanpur and Danish Ali from Amroha. The party is yet to announce its candidates for the Amethi and Rai Bareli constituencies. And Bharatiya Janata Party held a meeting of its Central Election Committee on Saturday to decide the names of the candidates for the upcoming general elections. The list, which is expected to be announced on Sunday, will include candidates from Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, Rajasthan, Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. The election for 543 Lok Sabha seats will commence in 7 phases starting April 19. Business updates now. India is projected to see a growth of 10.5% in airline seat capacity during the second quarter of 2024 compared to the same period in the previous year. India's projected capacity in Q2 of 2024 is far higher than that of Japan, Spain, UK, Italy, Germany, Indonesia and Turkey. At the global level, global airlines will touch 1.5 billion seats in Q2 financial year 25, up by 8% in the same period from the previous year. The report said India's low-cost and popular airline Indigo is at number 8 in terms of seat capacity in the world. Now, India's Forex reserves increased by $6.396 billion to $642.4 billion for the week ended on March 15th. In October 2021, the country's Forex kitty had reached an all-time high of $645 billion. The reserves took a hit as the central bank deployed the kitty to defend the rupee amid pressures caused majorly by global developments since last year. For the week ended March 15, the foreign currency assets, a major component of the reserves, increased by $6.034 billion to $568.3 billion. Sports updates now. We'll start with IPL. The focus will be on KL Rahul's form and fitness as Lucknow Super Giants take on Rajasthan Royals in the Indian Premier League match in Jaipur on Sunday. Rahul missed the last 4 tests against England due to injury. Rahul will look to hit top gear not only as a batter but also as a leader of Super Giants, especially after guiding the team to successive playoffs in the first 2 seasons. His opposite number, Sanju Samson, will be keen to find his rhythm right from the start. Both the teams will have some tough calls to make as they figure out their best 11. Royals have a solid batting lineup, boosting of the likes of informed Yashasvi Jaiswal, Joss Butler, besides skipper Sanju Samson. And in another match, 5-time champions Mumbai Indians will kick off the IPL 2024 campaign with a game against Gujarat Titans on Sunday in Ahmedabad. The match will mark Hardik Pandya's return to Mumbai Indians, which traded Pandya from Gujarat Titans and appointed the all-rounder as a skipper of the team. Pandya already has 1 IPL title, having led Gujarat Titans to the silverware in 2022. The other vital players are Rohit Sharma, Surya Kumar Yadav, Ishan Kishan and Jasprit Bumrah. Meanwhile, Gujarat Titans will be led by Shubman Gill. The other key players of this team are David Miller, Matthew Wade, Ridhiman Saha and Kane Williamson. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.
In today's episode, let's try to understand what does it mean to truly celebrate all women. Let's uncover the layers of their struggles in different walks of life.
My biggest motivation was to save the environmental waste that I was creating, to reduce the carbon footprint, waste footprint. And when we talk about menstrual waste or periods as a topic, I think this fits in very well with the intersection of social and environmental issues.
The weather in Meghalaya definitely one of the center points of how we design these systems. And then sort of maybe just take the region in the state and try and design a system that is designed to work in that situation.
We address financial education topics, from making a family budget to creating a small business plan for micro enterprises. Topics also include health and wellness for women.
Global temperatures have changed these days. That too, it doesn't rain where it needs to rain. And in this situation, the only crop that survives is millet.
Debate